Chapter 31. I was teaching Judo the day it happened. It was a very hot Monday in my small African village on the Capri Strip, 450 kilometers from nowhere in Namibia, along the Zambezi River. "Knock, knock," said Christoph, my 18-year-old Judo team leader. "Sensei, time to go," on my usual weekday after-class training routine. I napped every day after a lunch of powdered instant noodle or pea soup and a tin of something or other in my mud hut. I got out from under my mosquito net and stretched. It was always too hot to be outside in the heat during the afternoon, so practice was always at 4 p.m. I grabbed my 2 judo gis and I opened the wooden door. Christoph and I held hands as we strolled out to the bush dojo through the searing hot sand. It's a common African custom for men. I met my 12-member judo team practicing kicking under the shade of one tree in the sand. I had to face facts. They were movieized. They believed in karate, the show-off type, punching and kicking martial art, as if it was the only martial art in the world, and they had never seen judo. It was time for me to introduce them to the real magic of self-defense, now that we had begun to trust each other. I had been in the village a few very long, hot weeks. Today was a day of reckoning for who's who in the OK Corral. I threw my extra judo gi to the first in line, a teenage kid named Kennedy. He could literally jump over my head. Quick, wiry, strong, he stood there transfixed. I put the gi jacket on as if he was holding a holy garment in church. I ordered, "Attack!" He just stood there. Africans kneel before their teachers and are very submissive to their teachers. He was in shock. I yelled, "Attack!" He did. I threw him hard into the sand and told the next in line to put the jacket on. This continued until I threw all 12 of them. I had to headbutt the biggest one. I cheated. I was so completely exhausted. We piled on each other as if winning the World Series and laughed and celebrated our new warrior status as future Namibian Olympic judo champions. It was the best damn day of my entire life. I did it. I was thrilled that I got an Olympic judo team started in a third world country. Ooh, rah! Christoph and I held hands as we strolled back to the village on a well-worn path through the bush, pulling on each other's hands at the exact moment the other guy's foot was ready to touch the sand, off balancing each other. Still playfully laughing, trying to understand English and mafwe together. I went into my hut. I took off the sandy jacket and pants, wrapped a large kikoi around me, grabbed my towel, and strolled proudly through the village out to the hostel at Zico Sinyana Senior Secondary School for a really nice cold shower. The only one in many miles. Only one knob was necessary. There's no such thing as hot water. Only smelly, cold, brown water from a borehole deep in the ground, squirting out of a pipe as a steady stream of cold water. The instant it hit me in the head, I was frozen in place like a statue. Suddenly, I was shaking all over furiously. My hands could not grip the knob to turn off the water. Finally, I did it, and I struggled to the door. I could feel the eyes on me, waiting to fill buckets at the borehole, so I tried to hide my shakes. When I hit the sunshine, the shakes slowed down a bit. But as I strolled back to my hut, everyone in the village knew what was the matter with me. They knew the truth and would not look at me. It was impolite to acknowledge a superior's weakness, and I was a revered teacher and an important American guest. I had contracted the dreaded malaria. It turns out, not just malaria, but cerebral malaria, the most dangerous African killer, because you succumb to the coma, you never wake up. We all heard about it in training. We were all scared of it. I never took the damn pills. I knew they only delayed the reaction after the mosquito bite causes it. A female, don't you know? I figured after a few bouts with it, I'd get immunized over time. Wrong. The freezing shakes slowed down to a halt after I heated a kettle full of water, poured it into a pan with cold water, and made it into a hot temperature, and I stood in it. Then the fierce burning fever started, and after a few minutes the sweats hit. Gads. The fever and the sweats were worse than I could ever have imagined. It was awful. Then I calmed down a bit. I climbed out of the pan and barely made it to my rack. That's a bed. I got under the mosquito net. I lay on top of my sleeping bag. This burning, freezing routine lasted for days. I slipped into and out of searing hot delirium. The freezing shakes and tremors were like being in an Antarctic during an earthquake. The fever and sweats were like being in hell. I tried to teach class each day as the principal asked me over and over what was wrong. I told him I thought I had a bad case of flu. Denial is a bitch. I would not admit I had the dreaded disease. I finally took my own temperature in my hut. I looked at the thermometer issued to me by World Teach Organization, and the damn thing was in Celsius. It was 39.5. That didn't seem so high to me. I found out later it's about 105 degrees Fahrenheit or more, but what did I know? Then the headache began. It was the most painful physical experience I have ever had in my entire life, then or since. A softball-sized ball of searing, migraine-like headache pain was rolling around in my head. Tears were streaming down my face constantly. I begged God, please take me. Truthfully, I was afraid I would not die. What a week it was, trying to fake it as a tough old American white man in a remote African bush with malaria and no food. And I insisted I complete my duties as a teacher of English classes at the same time. It was the worst act I ever put on. I was not kidding anyone. They could all plainly see what was happening to me. There is not a minute of privacy in any small village. Everyone knows and hears everything going on in a tribal village, except for the conspiracy of silence about the denial lives led, except for the conspiracy of science about the dual lives led by the male teachers with government-assigned bakis. I found out about that much later. And as a personal note, if you have a vehicle, you can have a wife as a separate life in another village and one in town as well. So the guide teachers split on the weekends. It is really lonely on weekends in the village. The kids and the women were wonderful, but very shy about talking to me. The women helped me build a fire and heat water, and the kids hovered about my hut listening to my only tape on my handheld recorder. If they asked in English, I would play it again. I can still hear ABBA. When it made the movie Mamma Mia, I nearly died laughing. I will never see it. I heard it hundreds of times, over and over, until the only relief from it was when I purposely ran out of batteries. The next chapter is called Chapter 32, Enough, Enough, and it will be the day this lawyer remembered the day he died.